Hello, we're live here at Innovation Park. Thank you, Lester, for joining me today.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining my show, JHC and Friends. I have leaders, influencers, local entrepreneurs here in Tallahassee that join me on the show. And I'm so glad Lester Hutt with Hutt Recruiting Services is joining me for this. I think now it's like my 38th episode.
Oh, didn't do these. Nice.
I know. And if I include some other episodes, I definitely exceeded 60 episodes. But yeah, this is I could be wrong. My total numbers, but it's definitely up there. Where I get to interview local influencers like you. I consider you as an influencer because you've done so much for the community. And so we're going to obviously talk about your story. First, I know, and for those of you who don't know, he's president of Hutt Recruiting Services, and his experience ranges from government, organizations, tech companies, academic institutions, research labs, small businesses, large corporations. And so, and you have a background in MS, or you're a graduate of MS Analytical Chemistry from UC Berkeley. Like that's a long drive.
That is a long ways away. Yeah.
So where are you from originally?
Originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And so I was born and raised there. So all the way up until undergrad, I got my undergrad degree at the New Mexico Institute of Technology. We joke that that's in MIT, not MIT. So, but I got a dual degree in biology and chemistry there.
Yeah.
And then for my graduate program, I went to UC Berkeley. My original thoughts were to become a professor. And so normally you get a PhD to kind of go down that track.
Yeah.
And realized about halfway through the PhD program that I wasn't really passionate about research. I was good at it, but I didn't love it. And the way I could tell was, well, first I'd look at my grad student friends, and all of them were super passionate about reading scientific journals and research. They would read cover to cover things like Nature or Science, and I was reading Business 2.0 or Inc. magazine instead. And so I said, wow, okay, maybe this isn't my thing. And I think the thing that really put it over the top was my research project when I was an undergrad was to build something about the size of maybe like a quarter that you would put on a Mars probe. So you know how they have the little Mars rovers cruising around? And it was to look for evidence of past life on Mars. And if that's not the coolest like science project ever, and I was kind of meh about it. And so at that point I was like, I need to get the heck out of here. Right. So an opportunity came up for me about two or 3 years into my graduate program for me to work at Apple Computer. And I was a data analyst for them. So that was in 1999 to 2003. And that was right after Steve Jobs had come on board and kind of revolutionized, how they did product launches and whatnot. So I got to learn everything about how he made that transition.
That's so cool.
So the products that I was associated with, I did analysis for, were like the first titanium PowerBooks. So the look that you see now. And as well as the iPod, like first gen iPods. This was pre iPhones,
90.
That was 2002, 2003. 2000. Yeah. Long time. I mean, I know people say like 20 years ago, to me, 20 years ago was like 1980s, but really it was like early 2000s, right? So
yeah. No, I think it's because when I was in college, it was when you had the bright color iMacs. And that's what I remember. And I actually had to use those things for college and those like toilet paper seat. That was
the toilet seat. Yeah, the iBooks. Yeah. So that was one of the products I was an analyst for.
Yeah. That's so cool.
So analyzing a lot of the like what we call the field failures, meaning like key pops off your keyboard or the screen goes dead or something.
To me.
Yeah. So you probably called it. And I probably looked at one of your calls and analyzed like what's going on with all of the products out in the field. So but I guess what I realized from that was, that was amazing working there.
Yeah.
But, every job you have is like a learning experience as far as like what what's a good fit for you personally? And one thing I didn't like about that was the corporate culture, like just how big it was.
Yeah.
And, I wanted to feel like I would make a difference. And so I know you had asked, like, how did I come to Tallahassee? Actually, it was my wife's family. So my wife, Ime, is originally from Tallahassee. She was born and raised here. We met at Berkeley. And then about 3 years into Apple, I was thinking of applying to MBA programs because we both knew we wanted to be in a small business versus a big one. And her father said, instead of going to MBA school, why don't you come work for me? And you'll get all the experience. You're not going to go 6 figures in debt from going to grad. And
yeah.
And so he let us kind of come on board. And their industry is in lighting, so like chandeliers, bathroom, like decorative lighting for the home and stuff. And they import it and then wholesale it throughout the United States. So that's what brought us to Tallahassee. I worked there for about 3 years, and then my wife stayed on, and now she's the president of the company.
Yeah.
And I got to kind of go into different industries and whatnot. So
that is so cool. And so I think that was the smartest move, obviously, because like now I'm hearing a lot of experts in podcasts saying, instead of getting an MBA, university, but it's almost better to start a business or, buy a business and grow it. You learn a lot more. And so, I mean, I've seen the growth, that Ime's had, and I know you still contribute. And I recently went there, met Lisa, and she mentioned you helped them find a lot of people.
Absolutely. So she's my favorite client right now. Yeah. So I help them find a lot of different folks. And I mean, just right now we are looking for other people. And so right before this interview, I had interviews with 2 potential applicants for a position that they have open. So
that's so cool. Yeah. I really want to, I want to know, because I really like too that you have a lot of insight with talent, workforce development, that kind of thing. And so you really see the big picture and everything, all the challenges that small businesses face. So I'd love to ask about that further down the line. So, but I want to go back to how you met Ime. Like, how did that happen? Was it a coffee shop? Like club?
So, we were both majors in the chemistry program. I was a grad student and she was an undergrad. And so she was actually in one of the lab sections that I was teaching, and we didn't officially start dating until after grades were turned in. But kind of the way that I kind of knew that she was the right one is we had a coffee date. And, like normally if you go on a date for coffee, it's like 45 minutes, an hour, and then you kind of split ways. I mean, we were there until the shop closed. Aww. It was like 4 or 5 hours, and it was just so easy to talk to someone. Yeah. So that's kind of when I knew.
So what year was this?
Gosh, that was 99. So,
okay. Yeah. So so you were there from 99 to 2003, 4?
I was in Berkeley from 97 to about 99.
Okay.
And then, that's when I then transitioned over to Apple. But I met Ime towards the end of my graduate program. Yeah.
Okay. Because I lived in Berkeley and I never asked y'all which years you guys were. We probably crossed paths and didn't know it.
We probably did. Yeah.
I was there from 1999 to 2003, 04. And then you were already in Apple, and I was just like a college student.
Yeah, I was. I mean, Ime was still pursuing her undergrad degree. So we lived kind of on the northwest part of Oakland, in a place called Piedmont, which was right next to Fenton's.
I love Piedmont. That's where
Piedmont. Yeah, so that's
Trader Joe's. That's where. Yeah.
So we would. That's where our apartment was, and then that way I could commute down to Apple, and then she could still get to Berkeley really soon.
Did you take the BART?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah. I took BART all the time. I had a different path though, but you probably went the other way. But oh my goodness, that's so cool. So, and I know y'all recently visited with the family and everything. Like, what was that like for you?
It was good. Yeah, I mean, it was obviously very nostalgic for us. But my wife calls it. We took all 3 of our kids, and we called it the "How I Met Your Mother" thing, because we showed the coffee shop where we went. It's still open, so it's a place called Cafe Strata.
I've been to that one. Yeah.
So we just even showed the seat where we sat. They still have the same seats. Where we went on dates and stuff, but then also where we got married up in Lake Tahoe, and so kind of showed them all the different.
That is so cool. Yeah. It's funny. I tried to take the tour, not obviously the same theme, but I showed the kids where my Mike is where my parents were, where we lived, and back in the Bay Area too. So they're like, oh, exciting. I mean, how were your kids like?
They were
super
actually
into
excited.
it? I can totally see.
No, I mean,
super into it.
especially our youngest. You know, she was just like, oh, you know.
I love it. And so now you've been in Tallahassee for how long now?
Gosh, like over 20 years. I mean, we moved here in 2003. So
yeah. And you really have, and I know I see it in how involved you both have been in the community, how you really love Tallahassee and are happy to stay here, and even just hope that the community thrives. So what would you say as advice to, you know, just local influencers, leaders, to, because there's always this talk like, how do we develop the workforce here? How do we get people to stay? You know, what would you say?
I think sometimes, so the overall goal for my wife and I here in Tallahassee is, you know, to be able to kind of build the ecosystem here, meaning like, you know, business opportunities or just career opportunities for young people, where, you know, when our kids are old enough that they may consider staying here, or, you know, if they go somewhere that they may want to move back, but create that ecosystem for them, so that they could find a job or have a happy career here. And so with that is kind of like one of our leading kind of passions. What I try to do is, what can I do just as a community leader to make that happen without, I don't want to get into elected office or anything, but what can I just do personally? Right. And so getting into recruiting was one of those options for me, where I was like, you know what, I can take all the lessons I learned. I used to be a recruiter for a local software company named Diverse Computing, was there for 9 years, and took all the lessons from that and said, okay, how can we apply those same lessons and, you know, knowledge to many more small businesses and organizations so that they know how to recruit more effectively. And so it's not necessarily one of these business ideas where I'm trying to make like billions of dollars, but, you know, it's something where it's like, what can I do to, you know, earn a good living, but at the same time help other businesses.
And I'm glad you answered my question, really, is why you started. And so what have you been finding now? How many years has it been since you started?
So I've been in business since August of 2021, so a little over 2 years. And actually, I'm an analyst. I love analyzing numbers. And I actually analyze how many people have we helped. 45 different organizations or businesses, and hired over 110 people.
That's wonderful.
So just in 2 years, like that's about a hire every week for the different places, and helping them find the right fit, you know. And that's another passion of mine, is like helping people find what is that right job. Maybe it's not dream job per se, but it just matches very well with your personality type and what you're looking for.
So where have you found success in retention? Because that's one of the biggest problems, I think, and challenges that people are facing here in Tallahassee, is like, if you hire young, they're going to leave after 2-3 years.
More like, about 2 years.
Yeah. You're seeing that.
There's science behind that too.
Yeah. And then I, you know, I'm also talking to others who've been around, and like, there's value in, what about like actual families, you know, recruiting families to move and staying for longer. Because I think, like, my husband also transplant, and he's been here now. We've been here 12 years. And, you know, it's not easy to just pick up and go if we want to.
Right. Yeah.
So what about, where are you finding that success in the talent?
So on the retention side, what happens, especially with, let's say, a recent graduate, because we do talk a lot about like the brain drain, and that's the problem of graduates coming out of places like FAMU or FSU, and highly educated, well-qualified candidates, and then they just flee, right? They leave Tallahassee. And part of it is just awareness, just you know, pointing out that there are jobs here, you know, even though it's a smaller size city, you know, it's not a town per se, but there's definitely opportunities here. It's just getting more of the small businesses to kind of advertise that we're here, you know, kind of thing. What was that? Horton Hears a Who, right? It's like, we're here, we're alive kind of thing. It's just, you have to kind of get the word out, and getting small businesses to kind of invest time and money into, it's almost like branding, you know, local branding. And so that's part of it. But let's say you actually get someone to stay in Tallahassee. So a recent graduate says, hey, this is great, I'd love to work at this place. The problem you run into is, well, not problem. So the first year after they graduate, they got their first full-time job. typically they have a apartment on their own, so they're not having to share with 4 roommates. That first year is magical. It's awesome, right? They're learning all these skills. They have money to spend. But here's the thing: if they're still hanging out with their friends that are still in school,
Right.
so they're hanging out with their buddies, they're able to actually afford Madison Social and all these places that before they have to really be on the cheap. Right now they have money and they have free time. And so they're hanging out with all of their old friends.
Right.
But if those friends then graduate and they could leave, that person hasn't made any new connections or like community involvement. They've just been hanging out with their old friends. So when they leave, that second year becomes, I hate to say it, very depressing.
Yeah.
Because all their friends just left, and it's almost like clockwork.
Right.
When they celebrate their second year birthday alone in their apartment, boom, they're gone.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah, and so that's part of some of the initiatives I try to do is how can we form better connections, especially with the younger graduates that do decide to stay here, and help them form like friend networks or just like, I call it like finding your tribe, like find people who are like-minded so that you have now a network, and it's much harder to uproot if you have a well-established connection. So,
and is that one of the reasons why you started Nat 20?
Yeah. So Nat 20 is just so everyone knows, Nat is NAT, so it stands for Nerds Around Tallahassee.
I'm wearing a shirt.
And she's wearing the shirt. Yay! I was thinking of wearing mine, but so what it is it's a network specifically for people who are more in, call it like the geeky or nerdy industries, right? So let's say computer programming, IT, data analysis, accounting, engineering,
robotics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of these folks. And the problem was usually those types of careers or those jobs, you get kind of siloed. So you don't meet each other unless you're working for a really large organization, let's say like FSU or something. But many of the, especially IT and software companies, are smaller in size. So you may make friends just within the company, but if you want to make friends outside, it was kind of hard. And there are a lot of social networking groups out there, but those are all geared usually towards salespeople. So people who are trying to sell like financial accounting services or just a whole banks, like lots of banks. Yeah.
Realtors.
Yeah. And so the problem with those type of networking events is, they're great for that group. But if you're someone who's really into Python coding or something, you start mentioning that, eyes glaze over, and then they're like, okay, I'm not welcome here, right? Kind of thing. So we wanted to create a group where, again, like-minded, find your tribe type of situation where more people could get together. And so we've had several of these networking events, and I'm telling you, the stereotype of the majority of like nerds or geeks is that they're very quiet, they're introverted, they just like coding in the dark, kind of thing. But oh my gosh, you get a group of them together all talking about Java or cloud services. Woo, they just they're so happy and talking to each other.
Yeah. No, I mean, I married one. So
there you go.
He's like, and it's funny when I try to get him to socialize and go with me to these networking events, he's like, really? No, but what he gets excited about working on projects related to coding and programming, and like he interacts easily with people when it's centered on that and tech and everything.
And I've seen him enjoy himself at Nat 20 events because it's again with people that
and they've been great. You've designed those events so well that like I have fun, even though I'm not a coding person. And I think you did a great job with that.
Oh, thank you.
And so
that means a lot to me.
No, I know it's hard to continue with that momentum. And but speaking of which, holiday party for anyone who doesn't know, right? There's one coming up. It's with
a couple other organizations. So it's with Taltech, which is another kind of tech oriented organization. It's going to be at the Challenger Learning Center on, I think it's November 29th. Yeah, it's a Wednesday.
Yeah, like 5 p.m.-ish or something.
And we always throw in some like fun, geeky aspects. So I think we're going to have like Mario Kart on the IMAX.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be like this nerdy image trivia. There's a Mars escape room. So you have to escape Mars. Yeah. So.
Well, I heard there's only like you have to claim your spot, right? Like there's only a space for 12 or something.
Yeah, for the escape room. Yeah, and it's hard.
Oh, I'm not gonna do well. I'm gonna embarrass myself.
I mean, I thought with my Mars experience, like I would be able to just destroy that escape room. It's tough.
Oh, so
I used every
did you
single.
Design it?
No, I did not design it. but I used every bit of my brain to solve the problems on that.
Oh, so, cool.
It was tough.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's like if anyone's into escape rooms, like that's a great.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And so I know I'm pulling up like some visuals. You got testimonials.
Yeah.
Looks like you worked with Thomas Howell
Ferguson.
That's awesome.
They were one of my first they were one of my first clients.
That's
and
great.
helped them find both marketing folks, as well as they were big enough to where they needed their own full-time recruiter. And so I helped them find their recruiter. So a recruiter finding a recruiter. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's
and she's doing great there. I still stay in touch with them a bunch to kind of see how they're doing.
That's
and
good.
Yeah, they're just thriving right now.
So even if you replace your own, I do the same thing too. I actually help people find marketing.
Yeah. Here's the deal. Like if you go back to what is our goal?
Yeah.
Right. It's more, again, it's not me trying to get a client to be 100% dependent on me forever.
Right. Same here.
We need them, if they're growing to the point where they need their own recruiter, it's like, let's help them find that right person.
That's
right.
Great.
Because then they're going to keep growing and thriving. And really that's what we're trying to do, right? Is try to, again, build out that ecosystem, have opportunities for our younger generation to come and stay here. So.
And I'm going to make sure, like, we still have some time for you to talk more about, like, is there anything that you want to tell the community that you highly specialize in, or what's been really helpful in your strategy?
The types of businesses that we go after and stuff. So
yeah, sure.
What I try to focus on is, we're not a headhunting service. So I think that stereotypical recruiter, especially like a placement type firm that you hear about, is they're stealing people from one place and putting them somewhere else. And I really disagree with, they call it like poaching. And I really disagree with the poaching model.
Yeah.
And so what we try to do is we call it attraction-based recruiting. And so what that comes down to is like writing about a job descriptor, like and especially in the job description that you see on like LinkedIn or Indeed, writing that up in a way that attracts the right person. And so, not every job is right for everybody, right? So we're trying to say, okay, for this particular job, what does that person's personality look like? What interests do they have? But also as a company, then helping them write about their workplace culture and what's different about them. And also getting into like what benefits and stuff do they offer, being much more descriptive in the job description. So that when we put that out there, the right person, when they read it, says, I have to apply for this job because it fits everything I'm looking for. And so we don't really go by volume of candidates, but kind of a narrower set, but people who are probably a much better fit. And that's a key aspect of me, is like helping people find what are they passionate about and, finding that right fit. So my wife, Ime, she jokingly calls me a matchmaker, but for jobs.
Which is great, because some companies don't know, or even some cases, recruiters and other, I'm not saying anybody locally, but the job description is not clear. It's too long, like, especially for the younger talent pool. They don't want to read all of that.
So what's interesting is ours are actually on the longer side. Okay. And here's how we counter that. I agree with you. It's like in today's realm of like succinct posts and stuff, like, okay, if it doesn't catch my attention right away, I'm moving on. So we always have a summary. So it's like 5 lines, like what's most important about this, right? So title, where it is it going to be remote versus on-site, salary range, and maybe just very basics on the requirements. And then if they're like, you know what, I like what I'm seeing, let's go into more details. And
that's great.
The reason we give details is because there's certain things, especially when you get to like benefits, where, place might say, yeah, we offer benefits, period. And it's like,
you need to know more.
What do you mean benefits?
That could mean anything.
Yeah. And, the unfortunate thing is sometimes someone might get to the end of the application where the company likes them, they're going to make the job offer, and then the candidate sees the job offer and it's missing, or, they assume there's going to be benefits, and there's maybe like, oh, I get free coffee. It's like, that's it. What about health insurance? They're not going to
stick around.
Right. Or they're not even going to accept the offer.
Right.
At that point, right. And so we try to have it where it's upfront.
Yeah.
That we do that stuff.
That's great.
Because if it's described out, okay, what does health insurance mean? You know, okay, sometimes it's just like a $100 stipend and you go get your own insurance. Sometimes it's fully covered. Maybe it's 90% covered, but then your family you have to pay in separately. So again, we go into those details because some people, maybe health insurance isn't important because their spouse is able to provide it through their work, or other types of things aren't important, but other things are. So that again helps weed out the, you know, filter out the candidates who may be awesome for the job, but are looking for certain benefits and it just doesn't align. Right. So
do you think that's I mean, just because of the expectations now, because all these other companies are putting it out there, these are the benefits. And so
it's the hard thing for some small businesses to be able to afford that. Right. I mean, like when I first worked at Apple, I had no idea what good benefits were, but they had pretty good benefits. I mean, it was like fully covered health insurance, like fully covered dental, optical,
even for full, just because you went
full coverage. Yeah. I mean, as a grad student where you have nothing to,
that's
like,
great. Yeah. And worth the commute, obviously.
And so, you know, and that's the hard part for some businesses, right? Is like, it's expensive to offer health insurance or a lot of these other types of benefits, but there's other ways you can be competitive, but there are times when you just have to kind of bite the bullet and offer some of those benefits too. So
because now you're competing against these bigger companies, and because of remote work, it's possible now you can lose talent just easily.
Very easy to lose.
It's not the local market anymore. Really.
Right. Yeah. It's not just localized. So yeah, I think especially in the tech space, that COVID hit a lot of tech companies pretty hard because suddenly everyone realized they could work remotely. And so, I mean, we're a lower cost of living location. And so you'd have companies out of San Francisco saying, oh my gosh, look at this. I could hire a software developer for what's going to be like
less than 50%.
50 for what they're making in San Francisco, but it's a step up from what they're making in Tallahassee. So there was a lot of shifting of employees during that point. So I think it's kind of settled down a bit now, but it was pretty bad for a while where, I mean, I was seeing like tech support people being offered 6 figures. It was crazy.
No, I know. It's tech support. Yes. I know. I had friends that, I know. Seriously.
I mean, good for them for finding that, but it made it really difficult for the local market. So
I mean, it's pretty, and that's why I have to commend the people that have been able to retain my husband. I always say this, and really, I mean, I'm just like, how? Because sometimes I'm like, those paychecks look really good, you know. But because he's loyal and it's the culture that really keeps him, you know, and thankfully, I mean, after, you know, even 2020, when there was like major spike in hiring, and then there was the crash, and then tech people were being laid off.
Right now, there was quite a few layoffs.
And so like some of those same companies that tried to recruit him also eventually laid off. So he was really glad he stuck with what he, you know. Obviously,
I've actually seen that with one of my friends where, you know, she got a good, well-paying remote job, paid significantly higher than she was before. But within a year, laid off. And now she's struggling to find.
So I think, would you say that there's a strength in that with the local businesses, that you have this in-person connection, you know, and especially for talent. So do you get to, like, where are you finding, I guess you could say low-hanging fruit, like where are you finding the most valuable in investing in time with recruiting talent?
You mean for me personally, or for organizations?
For organizations, and or even just like age group. Are you targeting a specific age group, or it's just like open-ended?
No, it's we always just look for who's the most qualified, right? For a position. I mean, sometimes it's, if they're looking for an entry level, maybe we'll pull out of the university system. But as far as the low hanging fruit, what's the easiest way to find people is, I think, just going back to that job description and just doing a good job of laying out what that's like. I know business people, they're super busy, right? They have so many things going on. And the easiest way to post a job is to just copy and paste what HR says internally. And it's usually just a list of tasks, right? Post that, put it on Indeed, and let's see what comes in, right? Without really thinking out, like, how can we attract someone? Like, what do we need to put outside of just the tasks? Because no one just wants to read tasks anymore. They want to know, like, is this going to be a match for what I want? Are the benefits good? You know, all those types of things. So really thinking that out instead of just doing the easy copy and paste. and what I mean by that is like internally, you may have a job description that lists out all of your tasks, and you might find it in like your annual review or that kind of stuff. But that's part of the job description that you would post, or job posting that you would put out on like LinkedIn or Indeed. But there's so much more you can add to that.
So it sounds like you also consult the whole process.
Absolutely.
Like, what's the onboarding process look like? Like if somebody were to reach out to you, and they just reach out to you and say, hey, can we set up an appointment? Like, what's the process?
Yeah, we actually just went through this yesterday. There is a local architect firm. They're looking for some drafters. And so we set up an initial meeting and just explained our process. But also the first step is going to be always finding out, what is that workplace culture like? And how can we describe that? In their eyes, what is the ideal personality traits that they're looking for? And it really depends both on the job as well as the workplace culture, right? So a good example of that is at Diverse Computing. We hired a lot of software developers. So you obviously want people who love programming, that are analytical, that are precise with their code. But one of the culture aspects at Diverse Computing was to be very helpful. In other words, like if you came over and asked me for help, I'm not be like, no, that's your project. We wanted everyone to be helpful. So that was a trait that was very important to them. And so we looked for that. And if someone showed that they were very unhelpful or just standoffish, they weren't hired, even though they may have been like an amazing developer. Right. And so you have to look at both traits that are critical for the job as well as traits that are important for your business.
Do you do like personality tests?
Absolutely.
I love that. I geek on those.
Yeah, I'm analytical about that kind of stuff. So yeah.
So like, I know like the thing is, because this could benefit everybody, obviously. So it can get really overwhelming when you have to, but your focus is primarily from the organization standpoint, right? But there's a major need for the younger, like even I'll include my age group but there's a need for millennials to now like just even just this personality training, just personal development, and even understanding where their strengths are. Like it takes so much time. So like, have you considered?
I've done a little bit. It's more on the freebie side where I do lectures at Florida State University and with college students. Where I kind of talk about like career paths they can go down. And this is mainly for like IT majors, where there's a lot of different tech jobs that are available. And the lecture I like to give is, oh my gosh, there's other jobs outside of being a software developer. And then there absolutely are in a tech company. And we kind of go through and say, okay, what does this person do? But then we go into what is the ideal personality trait for that role. And I kind of break it down into things that they would recognize. Right. So a good example would be like a project manager. They have to be amazing at organizing and planning. So I say, okay, have you ever had to organize? Like, are you the person that always organizes birthday parties? Or are you an event planner? Do you have to like do all these things that require very methodical steps? And writing down a bunch of stuff and kind of getting people together? Like, you would probably be a good project manager. Right. Or on the flip side, there's also testers. Right. So people have to test the code, and they have to be incredibly meticulous, almost like OCD, right? Like checking all the things. And it's funny because like most other jobs require a lot of optimism and whatnot. And that's one of the few jobs where you want a glass half empty kind of person.
Finding problems everywhere.
Find every problem you can. I mean,
it's true.
It's funny because after I say that one, I'm like, all right, does anyone feel they fit this? And maybe someone kind of raises their hand. I'm like, all right, you don't have to own up to it. After class, you can tell me. And usually I get like 2 or 3 people like, that is me. And I'm just like, well, you found a possible career for yourself. So
no, that's super helpful. It's one of those things that even I think high schoolers, young people should get into.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes people get into majors, and then after the fact, they realize, oh, I shouldn't have done that.
I mean, that was me. And also my wife. I mean, my wife is the president of the lighting company. She's not using any of her chemistry right now, right? And so,
but the analytical skills, like that, obviously you both are super smart.
We're analytical, and I don't think I was ever exposed to what other careers or industries could my analytical skills be useful in. I mean, I was analytical back in like elementary school. We would do this thing where I would try to figure out, like, when you're going trick-or-treating, what's the optimal path? Do you go like across the street like this, or do you go just down the row? And it was funny because anytime I'd go trick-or-treating with my friends, I would always be the one with the biggest sack of candy. It would be like a garbage bag full of candy. Like, how do you do that? And I'm just like, it's just math. That's all.
Like, oh, this one has a lot more candy, so higher chance.
Well, it's more like when you're crossing the street, like I would tape measuring, like how far is it to cross the street versus just going down the line. And then like which part of the neighborhood has like higher density houses.
And now you tackle it from a parent's point of view, like how can we
what's the most popular candy? So yeah, we're the house that hands out the full size candy bars. Yeah.
I know you make it a point to like make sure.
Yeah,
no, that's great. And then it's funny because like my son was able to try for the first time in the Southwood neighborhood with some friends.
Oh yeah.
I can't believe how packed that
gets
whole area.
Crazy packed.
Yeah. The reputation has preceded itself.
Yeah, I mean, there's cars that are parked in the median on like in the center line of the road. I mean, they're everywhere. Yeah,
I'm so glad that police is there, like just helping block traffic and everything. Anyways, but no, I'm going back to youth and personal development and everything, and which, by the way, which is a great segue to what I have on screen here is you volunteer a lot, you coach with the Lego Robotics team. It's Tally Robotics, right?
Tally Robotics, yeah.
And you have a team now.
Yeah.
Every year you how many years?
I've only done this for a couple of years.
Okay.
And so last year was the first year that I decided to be a coach. And it wasn't when people think of coaching for youth, it's almost always athletics, right? And in this case, I was like, I'm going to use a little bit of my nerd brain and like coach Lego Robotics. And so there's a husband and wife, Scott and Laura Leonard, that run Tally Robotics. And I was kind of underneath their wing and started up a separate started a team with the school where my daughters went to, Cornerstone Learning Community. And they started 3 teams from that. Cool. 2 of their teams actually made it all the way to state. So there's like, it is almost like a athletic competition. You go to like the local competitions. Then if you qualify, you go to regionals, and then you can go to state and even like an international level. And so that was last year. The team name that last year was the Saturn Ninjas. And this year I decided to create an all girls team.
That's so cool.
And the reason I decided to do that was, I noticed there was some definite dynamics that happen on an engineering team where, I mean, with the Saturn Ninjas, it's about 50-50 boys and girls. But I noticed that whenever the boys would get, I wouldn't call it being aggressive, but they're just like very confident. The girls would just kind of, okay, you go do your thing, and they wouldn't get as involved. And so I said, all right, let's make this more even, and it's really to help them build confidence in their abilities and kind of really expose them to other aspects of STEM. And so, our first competition will be December 2nd. It's going to be at Cobb Middle School here in Tallahassee.
Oh, cool.
Goes from, I think, 9:30 to 2. So if you want to see some...
So it's open to the community?
It's completely open to the community to watch.
That's great.
So if you have kids that love Legos, I mean, which kid doesn't nowadays, right?
Everybody does, right. Yeah.
So it's really cool because you get to actually build Lego robots, but then you also get to code. And the part that I think hits home for me is on the recruiting side. You always hear about needing soft skills, and this covers every soft skill necessary, from like managing a project to planning. There's like conflict resolution because as the team is coming up with different solutions for their robot, like which solution is right, they have to present in front of judges. And so it's like public speaking, figuring out what you're going to present on, and then
that's so cool.
All those things are in that. And I mean, I'm teaching them things that you don't hear about until you're a professional. Like we're doing like burn down charts and for project management, right? Where we're saying, okay, here's our end goal. What do we need to do to get this robot ready for competition? And we only got 5 weeks. So we got to figure out and those are kind of semi-realistic things that happen in industry, right? It's like, oh, your boss says, okay, this website needs to launch in 4 weeks. It better be perfect. You're like,
I know.
And working backwards to figure out how to make that happen.
I love that. And I feel like the more experience somebody could, go through that in their youth, or I mean, college too, but it's awesome that this is happening. And isn't like after December 2nd, is this where they advance?
So that December 2nd is what they call the qualifier. So it's more of a local. It's only like a few of the local counties that are competing there, but they're still going up against 18 to 20 teams. So
December 2nd.
Yeah.
Here. Oh, yeah. It's that big.
It's that big. Yeah. It's not a small competition. And then the regional one, if they progress, is usually out west, either near Niceville or kind of in that area.
Yeah.
And if they do well there, then they go to Jacksonville at University of North Florida for the statewide competition.
Oh, wow.
And that's where you're going up against like the best of the best.
The best of
I
the
mean,
best.
there were some from like Cape Canaveral. You could tell they had like the engineering parents. I'm just like, wow, that's a really good robot.
That's, yeah. Well, advantage there.
Yeah.
No, but then isn't there another competition? Well, isn't there like an international
Yeah. So I mean,
And
this organization that they're a part of is
Yeah.
called FIRST, and it is an international competition.
Yeah.
And so if they progress all the way to the international competition, then they get to fly to, you know, Houston or one of these other places where they're actually hosting that.
Wow.
But there's the next level above Legos is where you're building like real robots with
Wow.
real metal and gears and giant batteries and actual circuit boards and stuff. And
Oh my
that's for like high schoolers.
Okay.
But yeah, there was a international, it was one of those kind of regional competitions that was here, and the winners of that went on to the international one.
Wow.
And they're going to have that again here in Tallahassee.
And it is going to be hosted here.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
that was at the gym at FAMU. So they covered up the.
I heard it was a great turnout.
It was a good turnout.
I know. I was like so bummed I was out of town, but I'm going to try to.
There was like 7 teams that were from out of the country.
I
know. From Australia to Afghanistan,
that is
Mexico.
So cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Bringing everyone to Tallahassee.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're running like pretty much like because there's so much to talk about, of course. It's always great. And just to share his contact information, Lester, for anyone who wants to follow you and connect with you. And Alyssa, she put in a comment which I shared earlier.
Yeah. Alyssa.
It's always great to see Alyssa. She's a loyal fan. But yeah, for anyone who wants to follow, like, and also visit his website, Hutt Recruiting Services. Lester knows everybody and the right people in town. So it would not be good to not be connected to Lester. So thank you so much for hopping on and talking about this. And I would love to have Ime, of course, when the season is right for her to tell her story too. And so, or maybe you both together next time. Well, thanks so much. I'm going to go ahead and go